and we've spoke about Kevin Keatts before, the head coach of NC State, a little bit. You know, he was on the hot seat before this week. He really was. There was Bruce Pearl, who's a coach, and you know when a coach said this, it's true. He's like, he probably was going to lose his job. He said that on the broadcast because Bruce Pearl's been on the CBS broadcast doing the tournament. He was like, he was probably going to lose his job. Now he gets an extension. And it's a really interesting question because this is the only sport, it's the only job in America where you can do a poor job all year.
Now for several years.
Several years.
Yeah.
Have one good stretch of 2 weeks and, you know, basically boost your career for maybe ever. Because you go to a Final Four, that sticks with you as a coach forever. That's like a lauded position to get there. It's very hard to get to a Final Four. So he gets to a Final Four, and you look at it like, it's interesting how universities, and I want your opinion on this, evaluate coaches. Because if I'm somebody who is an athletic director and I'm watching a coach and he does a poor job for 4 years and has one improbable run to a Final Four, I understand the logistics of it. You're not going to fire the guy, obviously, but it's hard for me to be like, well, yeah, he deserves an extension through 2029, which is what Kevin Keatts got. And credit to Keatts. He did a heck of a job through this run. I'm not trying to discredit him.
That's quite the extension.
I'm just saying, think about these other things. Like, okay, FDU's coach last year, they were 16-16. They did not win their conference tournament. They only got in because the team who won didn't have eligibility to go to the tournament. They beat Purdue, and he gets the Iona job. Not that Iona is a great school, but it's a step up, right? Like, you win a tournament game, and your whole career changes, whereas you could be horrible for the whole year. Get into the tournament, win a game, and get a better job. Do you think that is... Do you think if you were an athletic director, would you evaluate coaches like that? Because it is an interesting question when you have tournaments. Your success is based on how you do in the tournament. It is. But the reality of it is, you know, that's not the whole thing. The majority of it is not that. And yes, you have the tournament, you have to have some luck, and you have to have a few things go your way. And one run, is it worth it? Like, would you be giving extensions to guys for winning games like that?
No, I mean maybe like a 2. I mean, was it a 4-year extension? Is that what it is? 4 or 5 years?
I think he got. Well, I think in his contract, getting to a Sweet 16, he got an automatic 2-year extension. But I want to say,
that's probably.
But I want to say they extended him.
Yeah,
I want to say they extended him to 2029, I believe, when they got into the tournament.
Got it. I would probably put. I think that's actually good incentive-based stuff where it's like, hey, if you do make it to a Sweet 16, it's an automatic 2-year. Because I think that's very fair. Even if you have a shitty season and you do make it to a Sweet 16, you somehow get in like a 2-year extension, I have no problem with that because that's a success for NC State, right? I mean, there's some schools like Gonzaga that have been there 9 straight times. That's successful for NC State. I wouldn't be giving guys long extensions for just making one run. A great 2 weeks to me, if you're mediocre, and then just have a great 2 weeks, I'm not signing you for an extra 5 years.
Right.
But, I feel like we kind of go both ways on it, right? Because, Cal's always good in the regular season, right? It's lost 2 tournament games, and now we're like, well, should they fire Cal? So it's like, I feel like both people like to play, both sides of it. I think, you can find a middle ground where I think it's like, hey, if you're NC State and you make a Sweet 16, you're the coach, 2-year extension, whatever. Right. You make it to a Final Four, we'll give you a 3-year extension. You win the national championship, we'll give you a 4-year, whatever. Yeah. So incentive-based contract extensions, I think it is smart, but I do think we get carried away where it's just like, you have good 3 weeks, he makes it to the Final Four and it's like, okay, 5 more, we're signing up for 5 more years of this right away. And you're like, okay, I mean, I get why they do it, but I don't think there's other universities with coaches that are like on the hot seat that are like going like, oh, we got to get this guy now. A lot of times they do it for protection, because they're going to leave. It's like the whole Jimbo Fisher fiasco at A&M where they're like, oh, we're scared he's going to leave the LSU. Let's give him fucking $1 billion. Like, doesn't work out well most of the time. But I'm fine with 2 or 3 years if you make it to a Sweet 16, especially as a school that typically doesn't. I mean, that's fine.
That's the trade-off. NC State is not a team that's going to Sweet 16, so I get that.
And if I was an AD, that's how I would do the contract. So I'd be like, hey, look, if you make a tournament whatever your contract is. Like if I was at NC State's AD and I'd say, if you make the NCAA tournament, just make it. I'll give you an extra year on your deal.
Right.
I think that's good enough at NC State.
Yep.
You get into the tournament, you get an extra year on your deal. If you make it to the Sweet 16, I'll give you an extra 2 years, whatever it may be, and go about it that way. And then, if you're mediocre during that time, it's like, as a coach, well, I need to make the tournament to get an extra year. Like, I don't think anybody, I don't think most coaches would be like, oh, I deserve an extension by not doing that. So I think that's a pretty good way of doing it. So whoever came up with that, idea to structure it with incentives did a good job, instead of being like, we're going to pay him $5 million a year and extend him another 7 years for going to the Final Four. Yeah. So, how much money does he make a year? Do you know? Did he get like a raise for doing this? I assume
probably did.
Does Kim Mulkey make more money than him?
How much did you say she makes?
What a fucking joke.
How much does she make?
$3 million plus a year to coach women's basketball at LSU. I know this is why we'll never get sponsors, but that's fucking nuts. You got people, and like I said, I don't give a shit about the WNBA, but you have the best players in the WNBA making like, what, $300,000, $500,000. You have a Kim Mulkey who's coaching at LSU making $3 million.
It's ridiculous.
I'll do the job for $500,000. And I could do 40% of what Kim could do. So it'd save you some money.
You might be able to do 60%.
Whatever. Yeah, it's just a fucking joke.
He got a 2-year extension automatically by winning the ACC tournament.
Yeah.
A $400,000 pay increase that begins next season, and a bonus of $100,000 for winning the all of that for winning the ACC tournament.
That's good. He's got to get. NC
His contract
State
will now run through April 15th, 2030.
NC State, is happy to pay that because they didn't think they'd be in the spot, right? Yeah. So that's why you put those incentives in, like, okay, yeah, sure, but if we go to the Final Four, we'll give you an extra whatever years. But they're happy with it. It's not that big of a deal. I just want it, I just don't like to be locked into coaches for several years. I think it's kind of crazy. I think
the only thing I will say is here's Kevin Keatts' run at NC State. He's been to before this year, in 5 seasons, he made the NCAA tournament 1 time and lost in the first round, and was 8 games under 500 in the ACC. So that's my problem with it is,
how many years you said he was there?
5 years.
Yeah.
Now I will say 1 year was the COVID year, but looking at their record compared to the other 2 years, I don't think they would have gotten it anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe, they would have been on the bubble. But again, do you take that whole one run? And I get it's a Final Four. I understand that. But, I'm sorry. They made the NCAA tournament last year. So two times. 2 times in 6 seasons. This will be the 3rd time now. So it's a little bit better. I guess you get to the NCAA tournament last year, and now you're building a little bit. Yeah. But for the most part, he's not had success there. And they did not have success this season. And so that's why he was on the hot seat, right? Again, and I want to move on past this, but the shot doesn't go in, he's fired. 99%.
Yeah.
The bank shot, the guy doesn't make the shot. Virginia makes 1 free throw.
Crazy.
So it's just very, very interesting. That's why I wanted to bring it up. Interesting topic.
Speaking coaches, Andy Enfield got hired by SMU today.